Hello YouTube, Stainless J here with another video, a knife video, as you can guess. What I have here is a very old friend of mine. My father was a big fan of Craftsman tools, and every so often Craftsman would put out these traditional patterns, jackknives, stockmans, and this scout knife or utility pattern. This one came out in 1977, and it was designed to commemorate, I guess, the trademarking of the Craftsman name. Sears registered it in 1927, so it was like the 50-year anniversary. My father saw this and had to have it. Of course, I got a hold of it, and a 10-year-old me came with a clevis or bail here. I'll show you in a newer model, which I promptly twisted off trying to yank a nail out of a tree at a family picnic. But this particular pattern is called the Scout pattern or utility pattern, and it's very utilitarian. Generally with the Scout knives you have a very usable spear point blade, but this one came with a very stylized clip point. You can see I really wrecked it. It had a lot of belly at the tip. So actually it was a pretty useful blade, especially if you did a lot of slicing. You could bring a lot of belly in contact with whatever material you were trying to cut. It's long gone, but on the blade was etched something to the effect of 1927 Craftsman, had the old Craftsman logo on it. In some of my other videos I talked about how the EDC tools that we carry with us can be companions of a sort, and they can travel with us through time. And with tools, especially knives, as you can see, all the little nicks and dents, and like I said, it used to have a bail, which is missing. I remember the exact instant 10-year-old knuckleheaded me tried to use that bail to pry out a nail from some fence. But all the scratches and dings can, almost like a yearbook, I can tell a story about this knife. The design, if you look at this black plastic or Delrin handle, Sears and Buck Knives contracted with Camillus to make a lot of the knives that they sold in their own stores, and you would see this look a lot. The black Delrin, usually saw cut. You can still see it does have it. It's not worn out yet. The silver, nickel silver bolsters. So this was probably made by Camillus. A little bit about the Scout pattern. Usually it was a four-bladed knife, was real popular in the 20th century here in America. This is an American version of it. In Europe there were other versions that maybe had different implements, like in corkscrew. That really wasn't big here, and usually had another blade that was a common screwdriver slash cap lifter for opening bottles. Had to have a can opener, especially early in the 20th century. Cans did not have pull tabs. And generally on the Scout pattern you have an awl, but on this knife they put a small pin blade, which you could, I guess, impress and use as an awl to make a hole, but it was kind of nice having another blade. I'm sure this enjoyed what Craftsman is famous for, a lifetime warranty. Being the sentimental sort, I kind of miss this knife. It had been lost to me for decades, and I came across it in my father, who's now passed, but in his garage, and I said, "Hey Dad, there's my old Scout knife." And I said, "Your Scout knife?" And so I got it back. But on eBay I was able to find the newer version. Here you can see the different logos for Craftsman. This is the logo, I believe, that was on this blade, which is long since worn off. But my dad brought home a few of these beautiful little knives. Presentation is everything. Look at that box, like almost like jewelry. And he brought home a jackknife and a Stockman pattern knife. Just really beautiful knives, well made. I think one of them had a white plastic Delrin handle, just really gorgeous. This is what it looked like new. The model number on this knife is 95043. And this is that bail that my 10-year-old self yanked off the knife. But it's the cleaner, newer version of that blade. Mirror finish. You can see the camber in that. Here's the model number. Sears Craftsman logo. And spear point blade. Yep, I had to get it. It harkens back to my childhood, those misadventures or adventures with knives. This is more representative of the Scout pattern. 4-bladed knife. Here you have your awl or reamer for making holes, punching holes into leather or other materials. Screwdriver, cap lifter, of course a bail. You could clip it to your belt or tie a lanyard or string around it so you wouldn't lose it. There's your can opener. This is a hawkbill can opener. Then there's a spear point blade, which seems to be more common on these patterns. Very, very useful. We're talking about the 20th century, before pre-packaged, pre-cooked, pre-cut everything. Very handy tool. You had just what you really needed to enjoy a camping trip and kind of survive out there. Maybe make some minor repairs in clothing and materials. And one thing I always like on a pocket knife is a screwdriver blade, because many a knife blade has met its demise being pressed or used as a screwdriver or to pry things. And the knife blades are thin and brittle. They're hard, so they can hold an edge. So they don't do well for prying tasks or screwdriving tasks. So it's always good to have, I think, a screwdriver blade. That way you can pry and actually tighten the screw if you need to without damaging your blade. This is what's considered a traditional pattern. So useful they were that the military had its own version. This is a U.S. pocket knife, or demo knife as they're called. Apparently the idea was that it could be used for demolition purposes because it wasn't made of stainless steel, but actually it is made of stainless steel. And it's a classic spear point blade, very usable. There's your can opener, hawkbill can opener, and if there's any doubt, it says can opener. Screwdriver blade with the cap lifter. It has some rough edges, which actually works well for gripping and holding the screw that you're trying to turn. And this has a version of an awl. Thin at the tip, you can start a hole and kind of curved. It's a curved edge. You can ream and drill out a hole. Very handy. So handy, in fact, that the U.S. military would issue this knife for soldiers to use in the field. Again, bare minimum of tools, useful complement of tools actually, to get you through living in the outdoors and doing what you needed. Here's another example. It's more of a European example. I think this is a Wenger. You have the bail. It's called the Soldier, in fact. Here's our spear point blade, which is kind of nice. It's pointed for puncturing. You have a lot of edge, and then a little bit of belly for slicing. Maybe you have to bring the knife to bear on the material like that. It has a wire bender / stripper on the can opener or cap lifter. There's our can opener. Not really a hawkbill, more of a puncture type. This is actually one of the easiest can openers types I found to use. Also, they added a little screwdriver blade on the tip of it. And there's a reamer awl, really sharp. You can use it as a scraper too, save the edge on your main blade, because it is edgy. That was the Wenger Soldier. Craftsman knives growing up. My dad always had a few of these around. I actually commandeered this one and beat it up pretty bad. One thing to its credit is it's still functional. All the blades are still functional, just as sharp as ever. Put this in your pocket, take it on a camping trip, and after all these years, 1977, still very, very useful. This knife too, in my other videos I think I mentioned how this factored to my childhood. In the 70s, oh my gosh, you could buy these for $0.25. Go by your local or nearby Army Navy store, Army surplus store, and they had them. Now you had to, these were notorious for having busted back springs, because the back springs were real brittle and folks had a tendency to open more than one blade at a time. I would overstress it and it would just crack, usually right there. Then you'd have a blade flopping around. But these were, again, very useful. My dad just seemed to have an affinity for them. I don't know, maybe they reminded him of his tour duty in the Marine Corps. But he always had these around. They're easy to be had, and I seem to have a couple in my drawers, usually one in my pocket. And back then, it wasn't, you wouldn't clear the bleachers if you pulled out a small pocket knife. In fact, it was just common everyday thing. 1970s, it was nothing for a kid to have a pocket knife like this. Going out into a vacant lot or something, building a tree house or fort, improvised bow and arrow for playing around. Yeah, it was a different time, but still really, really useful. These days, the scout pattern still has its utility, I'm sure. If you're in the crafts or trades, if you're a carpenter, construction worker, maybe going on a camping trip, yeah, pretty minimalist thing. I think it's being replaced by more modern plier-based multi-tools, or even Swiss Army knives that have all different kinds of implements beyond just the 4 basic blades that you see here. Well, I just wanted to talk a little bit about this. I ran across it this week. This knife has seen some pocket time, and it was Labor Day weekend. You know, I figured, again, Labor Day, there's another holiday that brings back memories. I just want to say something about this. Now, these knives can still be found, well, all of these knives, you can still find on like eBay and flea markets and things, maybe even Army Navy stores. These have become a bit of a collector's item. Camillus, the American company Camillus, shut down. I think the name has been bought probably by an overseas concern, and they're still producing knives that say Camillus, but they're generally made in China, not made in the USA anymore. That's it, Sears Craftsman knife. Its age and functionality, going on 46 years now, speaks for itself. All right, thank you for spending some time with me. Enjoy your weekend. Bye-bye.